this video, we're going to talk about fractions that have exponents. What to do with a fraction that has an exponent. Well, the exponent tells us how many times we're supposed to multiply this to itself. So just like any other number, since this exponent is 2, I'm going to take 1/4 and multiply it to itself. How do you multiply fractions together? You multiply the top numbers together. 1 times 1 is 1. And you multiply the bottom numbers together. 4 times 4 is 16. So this exponent tells you how many times you multiply what's inside the parentheses to itself. And you have to remember how to multiply fractions together. You multiply the top numbers together. You multiply the bottom numbers together. Next example. The exponent tells us how many times we multiply this to itself. So I'm going to write down 1/2 3 times. How do you multiply fractions together? You multiply the top numbers together. You multiply the bottom numbers together. 1 times 1 is 1 times 1 is 1. Then I'm going to multiply my bottom numbers together. 2 times 2 is 4. And 4 times 2 is 8. Next example. The exponent tells us how many times we multiply something to itself. This is 2/3 times 2/3 times 2/3. Again, the way you multiply fractions together, you multiply the top numbers together, you multiply the bottom numbers together. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. Negative exponents. Well, we need to remember the rule for a negative exponent. If we have a negative exponent, we're supposed to write it as a fraction if it's not already written as a fraction. These are already fractions. So the rule is once it's written as a fraction, you flip it and you change the sign of this exponent. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to flip the fraction and change the sign of the exponent. What are we multiplying to itself based on this exponent right here then? It's 5/2 times 5/2. How do we multiply fractions together? Multiply the top numbers together. Multiply the bottom numbers together. So if I get a negative exponent and it's a fraction, the only thing I have to do is flip it, change the sign of the exponent. Now this exponent is telling me I need to multiply 5/2 times 5/2. Another fraction with a negative exponent. Again, I need to flip this. And once I flip it, I change the sign of the exponent. This is telling me to take what's inside here and multiply it to itself 3 times. Three times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. 1 times 1 is 1, times 1. This is a situation where I can actually divide these numbers. I can take 27 and divide it by 1 and just get 27. I'm not supposed to write 1s in the bottom. I am supposed to write 1s in the top. If this was 1 over 27, that would be 1/27th. But this is 27 over 1. That's simply 27. Another fraction with a negative exponent. Again, we're supposed to flip it, change the sign. This means I only write 1 5/3 down, and I'm done. Remember our rule for something that has an exponent of 0, anything raised to the 0 power is supposed to be equal to 1.